everyone, and welcome to today's Job Sync Roundtable. Today, we have a great topic, one that is definitely trending on the socials, and that is talking about SEO to AIO, preparing for the new frontier of job search. And I have two incredible speakers with us today. I'll introduce them in a moment, but first, I want to run through some of the rules we have here in our roundtable. This is not a webinar. We are not here to present to you today. We are here to have a discussion and a conversation that helps facilitate and support others in growing and learning. And you are a big part of that. So we are cameras on for this event. We ask that you turn your cameras on so that we can all be part of the event and participating. And you can feel free to turn off the mic and join in the conversation and ask questions. We do ask that you put them in the chat. We're happy to carry those conversations in. There are two conversations that usually go on during these types of events. One of them is taking place in the chat, and one of them is taking place in the live event. So you get the most out of this event by joining live. It will be recorded, and we will share that out to anyone who's registered to the event after the event. We usually do that within 48 hours of the event, as well as taking care of any of the questions that you have we didn't get to today. We try to get back to you in response to those if we don't have time to cover those today. So now I'd love to kick this conversation off by introducing our two speakers, James Ellis and Alexander Tchaikovsky. Leah Daniels, as you all know, usually carries this conversation for us here at Jobsync as the narrator. Leah, do you want to get us started today?
Sure. I'm going to have James, if you would like to be our first victim. Want
No,
to take a minute?
never. I'm very shy. I don't like to introduce
I
myself on
know
camera
you
and
are.
webinars and
So
focus
shy.
groups and things like this.
So
I
very,
know,
very shy.
That's
unbelievably.
literally the word I use to describe you all the time. I'm like, I want you to
Literally,
be the shy guy.
yeah,
James.
6 people in this room all go, Jesus, shut up, kid. Just talk about yourself. I'm talking to you, Kevin and Michael. I'm talking to you. I'm James Ellis. I do employer brand, but I think of myself as doing it a little differently. I don't think of employer brand as being this 90,000, 120,000 monolith deck that you get and you stick in a drawer somewhere and you ignore. Employer brand is what you do every day. It is this expression of your DNA, of your culture, of your processes, of your behavior, so that the right candidate goes, finally, I was looking for that, and they show up. That's what I do, which means doing it employer brands for smaller companies, for companies that didn't think they could do employer brand, and trying to do it in a lot more actionable way. I have wandered backwards into AI, much like many of you have, and I found myself fascinated 2 years ago, which is why I'm thrilled to be in this conversation today.
Amazing. And Alexander, I'm going to now punt to you. Can you do a little intro for us?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm also pretty bad at these. So try to keep it short but powerful. So I'm an advisor to the job board industry predominantly. So I come from a slightly different angle, and I work with some of the largest job boards and aggregators worldwide, and I help them with SEO, search and match, Google Jobs optimization, pretty much any topic you can think of that is related to how to operate the job boards technically efficient. And SEO is a big part of my advisory practice. I also have a couple of products that we offer to job boards, and I myself run job boards in the weird sector of crypto and blockchain, which are still operational. So I have a little bit of skin in the game. I used to actually work at Jobsync for a bit in the early years, so very emotionally connected to the team and the business. And today I support roughly about 300 job boards worldwide, and very excited to be on this webinar and to talk to you about SEO, GEO, AIO, whatever you want to call it today.
EIEAO.
BBQ.
My favorite one. And my name is Leah Daniels. I lead our commercial business here at Jobsync. And for those who don't know, Jobsync is a platform that helps optimize and activate your data. It helps bring candidates from out in the world all the way through your funnel, make companies much more efficient, all those good things. Let's talk about AIO. So in a very fast amount of time, we went from AI is machine learning, is big data, all these big words, to, oh my God, there's a UI and I can use it. And the consumerization of AI happened overnight. And now what we're starting to see is that candidates are moving their way from an AI chat to applying for jobs. And that is a new behavior that's kind of slowly got some traction in the last year or so. And so I want to really spend our time today talking about what is it? How do you make it work for you as an employer? What are the pitfalls? What are the good things? All that good stuff. So let's start with some basics here, if you guys don't mind. I'm not sure who wants to take this one first, but I'm going to pick on James first. James, AIO, what is it? How does it differ than SEO? Why do we care about the differences of these two things?
Well, so it's an interesting question in that we have spent all our time for so long thinking about how do we get good at Google? How do we rank at Google? SEO has always been code for how do we get good at Google? And the truth is, in very many ways, Google is not the biggest search engine. It's not the most important search engine. There's so many other search engines. And if we think about search engines, how do we get found? We realize it's not about search engine optimization. It's about search optimization. That people have lots of ways of searching. They can search on Instagram. They can search on YouTube. They can search on TikTok. They can search and search and search and search in job boards. I don't know. Job boards a thing? Yeah, I think it might be. The thing is now we have a new thing to search on, and that is AI. And the way AI was introduced and the commercialization of AI was, here is a chat box. Type in your question, I will give you an answer. And it was just a hop, skip, and a jump from that to go, help me find a job, or where should I look for a job, or tell me what you know about working at company A, B, or C. That is where the game is starting to be played now for a lot of different reasons, not just technological, but technology being one of the biggest drivers of this shift. And ultimately, for so many of the people who you really want to hire, not the people who are filling your applications right now, but the people who you are desperate to put in front of your hiring managers, AI is part of the journey. It is part of the conversation. It is where they stop. And if you, in the same way that Glassdoor was 10, 15 years ago, that is where people are stopping to say, what's it really like here? Should I bother to apply? What should I prepare for in an interview? This is where the conversation is starting to happen.
We are in a transitional period, though, right? Would you argue that SEO isn't dying by any stretch?
Oh,
but
no.
maybe it's being deprioritized, right? Especially when you think about Gemini showing up on the top of every blessed search result. And for me, at least, I don't know about you guys, but Chrome is really committed for me to get an AI answer before it gives me search results now. And to the point where I'm annoyed by it on a regular basis. I turn it off, it comes back on, I turn it off, it turns back on. So we are definitely in a transitional period at the moment. As you think about,
did you see Google's thing yesterday? Their big announcement, their annual event. They're really pushing. They're changing the search. Yeah, it's all AI search now. They really are incentivized. They're really pushing you hard. So there's no escaping this thing.
No, it's coming. So when you think about this from your perspective, Alex, SEO, natural language processing, AI, this it's not even a conflation, really. It's they're all coming together to create a new kind of outcome for people. Like, what should companies be doing now, today? What's the first thing they need to be thinking about when they look at their own world if they want to activate AI as part of the journey?
Well, not to not to get too technical, but the very first requirement that you have to make sure is that your jobs are discoverable, because difference between SEO and AIO or GEO or whatever we decide to use is that, in the end of the day, it uses the same data, right? There are different layers on this data, right? In SEO, we optimize for like web page clicks and we want to rank in the blue links. But in AIO, you get a keyword, then this keyword gets extrapolated to other hundreds of different keywords. Then you get like a synthesized answer. But in order to get the synthesized answer, the data needs to come from somewhere. And what I have personally seen doing a lot of scraping for the job board industry is that the career pages of companies have consistently like weaknesses around that. So they are not discoverable, they are not crawlable, they are not targeting the proper keywords, they don't have the job posting schema, they are bad at from like a technical perspective on their pure like SEO performance. And that's a great place to start, because in order to appear in AI search, doesn't matter if it's like the traditional AI search where there's no actual browser being involved, and so basically using the training data and using a browser, you need to appear somewhere and your site needs to be crawlable. And this is a big problem, I would say. And it's like the easiest area to start optimizing.
Oh, James, don't make me talk about robot files. It's my favorite topic. Um, if jobs are one half of the equation, I'd say the whole career site is the other half, right? Your branding, your messaging, your words, and that branding actually probably goes through to the job description themselves. How many companies look at the job description and it's exactly the same thing except for like 3 bullets that are different, right? So, James, I want to kind of punt to you. The other half of the equation, what do they need to be thinking about on the career site?
You got to think about how people look at things and search for things on AI. And think of your own experience. We were all taught over the last 20 years that when you're thinking about Google, you think in terms of 10 words maximum. And we type like cavemen, right? You know, thing, did, saw, like, gunk, I want this thing, find this page for me, right? AI opens it up and says, if you think and talk that way to the AI, you're missing so much opportunity. It wants you to write a paragraph. It wants you to put a little microphone on, record a paragraph or two raw, stick it in it, and it says, okay, great, I understand it. It loves that context. That is how people are searching using these tools, which means you're talking about a level of granularity and detail that up until very recently, I did not see on career sites. Most career sites, as I mentioned in the chat, I literally scraped every Fortune 500 career site. You'd be stunned how many of them are not word for word, but all but. Like they are so clonable. They are so the same stuff over and over. Oh yeah, hey, we have values too. Oh, you're the company that values integrity? Finally, I found one, right? Give me a break. 90% of the companies say that stuff. It's garbage. That's the thing, is that up until AI really came and made it super granular, that was fine. It was fine to throw up a couple of values. It was fine to say our benefits are we have health benefits. Okay, great. Good for you. I need more information on that. They were fine to say we're growing crazy. It was enough to say these really blanket, boring, bland, completely interchangeable things. And now with AI, like, hey, look, if I can look at thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of career sites to help someone find a place where a cybersecurity expert in a mid-level field, in mid-level level, who is looking in a regulated space to build something, which is insanely granular. AI is like, I got you, brother. I got you, sister. Let me show you what I got. And that is where adding so much more content, more specific content, more provable content is the first step on your career site to say, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we do. This is how we work. This is what you're looking for. The days of saying we're a great place to work and slapping your award on it, thinking that's enough, are dead. And they've been buried, and we should all pay attention to that. We need to start to be very clear about how we're great, because we're all great companies, but in what way are we great? And that is what the AI is starting to really look for, because it doesn't just want to say, show me great companies. It wants to say, give me more information. I need to know in what way are they great. And then it's just turtles all the way down. You can go crazy with that.
Can we
Yeah,
argue
but
that it goes from SEO, AIO? They're both really just answers optimization.
Mhm.
Just
In a lot of
optimize
ways.
to answers, right? You want to answer the question that the mystery person on the other side is going to have. Alexander, I just cut you off. I'm so sorry.
yeah, I mean, I think creating content, that answers these questions, it's a good strategy. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but you have to understand how the data gets baked into the models, right? So right now we have some pretty large models that have been trained on fundamental data, and this data is a snapshot, right? And every couple of months there is a new training that takes new data into consideration. But you never know if the content that you publish is going to go into this training data set, right? And there was a study from SEMrush early this year, I think April or March, I don't know, where they looked at like LLM answers, and 65% of them still kind of default to the old data set that was available before the model was trained, and only like 35% they go and do a live search. So meaning that even if you publish today like 1,000 articles around how good is it to work in your company, and what is it to find a job at X, and what is it to work as an engineer in Y, it might take months for this data to be picked by the LLM for you to rank, and it could take even longer, and it might not appear. But the other way around, right, is like brand mentions with links from like media outlets, and just make sure that you have statistically common phrases around your brand, and then to rank organically, which is traditional SEO. So it's like two different directions that you can go to, and each of them has, I would say, different potential, depending on where you are right now.
So do you think doing all the work to make your jobs discoverable, making them accessible, actually doesn't matter? Because if the LLMs are not at a place where they're doing frequent searching, or frequent indexing, really, it's not really searching, it doesn't help, or it does. I want to make sure because I think making jobs discoverable and by search engines is always going to be a good idea. That's always going to be a good idea for Google for Jobs, for the various boards that scrape, for however a candidate may come about your job content. But in the AIO world, do you think that's just a future state?
I mean, you have to think about the future, and the future is, for me, pretty clear. Gemini is going to integrate Google Jobs pretty soon. Yeah, it's probably a matter of months until we see it, because that's the biggest inventory of jobs. Right now, doing searches on Gemini or LLMs rarely resolves into an actual direct job link. And in a lot of cases, these are not up to date. So they predominantly like to link back to a category page, the one that Indeed has been owning for years when you search for product manager jobs in Austin, Texas, or even your specific brand. But ranking on Google Jobs, I think, is the proper strategy if you assume that Gemini is going to integrate Google Jobs, and I'm like 99% sure at this point that it's going to happen.
I think one of the points that you made there, Alex, that's really important is there's a difference between the training data and then search data. And even when you use an LLM interface, whether it's OpenAI or Claude or whatever, they're using a search index when they go to do a full web search. So Gemini uses Google, OpenAI uses Bing, and Claude uses Brave. And so they're following to get to the details, they're following general search outcomes, regardless of whether or not you're using a chat interface.
Yeah, it's you have a good summary. And I mean, if you don't rank in like traditional SEO, you are not going to rank in a lot of these queries. And this 6 months plus lag after each after each training, it's pretty long. So I think you gotta do both. It's my takeaway. But good SEO is the foundation. It's not the destination. It's still like appearing the top result is still the number 2 predictor for AI citations. Quite a lot of studies came out over the years. This hasn't changed. So if you don't rank, you most likely won't be quoted in AIO answers.
I think to some degree, there's a bit of a change in behavior that as recruitment marketers, we need to get used to, right? Which is the way you interact with an LLM might be different than the way you are with the search engine. I think, James, you were starting to say this before. Whereas it's a conversation. So you're starting with, hey, Claude, my new best friend and therapist, I would like to think about a new job because this place I work sucks and I hate my boss and all the things. So can we talk about what are my options? These are some things that are important, right? I prefer to work at home. I don't like to socialize. I'm pretty good at marketing, whatever it might be. Or I want to work just while my kids are at school, and I would like a role that leaves my afternoons and weekends open. Whatever it is, we're talking kind of in generalities, which will come down to a more specific piece, which as the chat goes, it does refer back up to the conversation happening, right? And so I think there's this marriage of the brand and the what I was calling answer source optimization a minute ago, right down to this piece that Alex is really rooting into, which is the end of the day, you want to arrive at a destination, which is not a category page on Indeed, but really a specific job or jobs related to an employer that is interesting, that the answers at the beginning have led the journey down to this set of jobs. Is that a fair characterization?
Think so. I think it's a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts, and I think what
Yeah.
everybody's going to notice is that Alex and I are going to be left brain, right brain, right? We're going to be fighting in that way. But I think what's interesting is that there's other changes happening behaviorally. It's not just how do we build content and what do we say, but it's how do job seekers think about what is a job? What do I look for? If the world is a job board, and in a way, a couple years ago, you could say that was a pretty safe claim. And every job kind of looked the same. Here's our company. Here's what the job is. Here's a series of bullets about the requirements. Here's a series of bullets about what you will spend your time with. Here's a couple of paragraphs of how we're not going to be jerks about it. And here, what you're going to get. That looked like every job. And honestly, if you don't get a lot of information, that's all you can go with. And every job looks the same. How do you choose? And surprisingly, everybody's applying for every single job under the sun. And we're pulling our hair out going, I am flooded with applications. So perhaps we start to think about all the different changes of behaviors and how people are thinking about jobs and thinking about how to find a job and how to find the right job for them by starting by understanding, one, companies have to be more clear about what they offer. And that to me is the brand. It's not about we're great. It's about we reward people who are X and we don't reward people who are Y. So people go, oh, I am that. I want that. And I want to be rewarded for it. They can find that. At the same time, we have to be clear and we have to prove that stuff. We can't just say we like autonomy. What does that mean? What is the shape of it? Give me stories. Help me understand that. How does that compare to other companies? There's the other piece that you're pointing out to that as Claude as therapist that is surfacing what people want out of a job and what they should be looking for. And, if you go on Reddit, as you should, recruiter hell and recruiters and recruiter, all of those, so
Amazing.
much fun, so much
Oh my
fun.
God,
But
terrifying.
it reminds, exactly the right word. It reminds me that 80% of recruiters still just go, I picked the 20 people who applied first and picked from there. And I just want to reach through the screen and say, if your hiring manager heard that you were focusing on efficiency rather than effectiveness, they would fire you on the spot. And these are the changes that are starting to happen. We're starting to realize that our processes are focused on optimization rather than effectiveness. And AI is going to start to break all the tiny little pieces and the connections that have been pushing us towards optimization, which is a trap, and now towards how do we find the best possible person? How do we get them to fall in love with us and what we offer so that we can come together as equals and not about in a kind of serf king, royal situation of I deign you to get this job.
All right, let's throw a wrench in this. Alexander,
Yeah.
recently, ChatGPT created a marketplace, and some job sites have decided to build an app to this marketplace. What is this? Do we want to be part of this? Is this good? Is it bad? Is it an unknown?
Well, I don't want to talk for like 2 hours on this
Oh,
topic. So I'm just going to paste a blog post I wrote about on that in the chat. For anyone who is interested and is willing to waste 20 minutes of their lives to read about the ChatGPT apps. But essentially, these apps right now are just the next, interpretation of what the OpenAI ChatGPT plugins were, or the custom GPTs. It's just the next iteration. The first two were killed, except the custom GPTs. They're still there, but no one uses them. It's a full graveyard. So of course, job boards are going to jump on this. For them, it's a big hook. Another possibility to get organic traffic because they have been hurt pretty bad SEO wise. Another topic over the years, and these apps are fairly, I would say, easy to build on a technical level. The question is, should you be doing this and what are you going to get out of this? The most important thing to note right now is that the flow for a user that lands on a ChatGPT app is extremely cumbersome, for lack of a better word. You have to find the app. You have to install the app. If you use Indeed, there are 6 apps right now which are published. And if you want to use Indeed, you actually have to log in with your Indeed account via ChatGPT, and then you have to allow your ChatGPT account to modify your link at your Indeed account. It's like at this point, if you haven't dropped off already, then respect, big up for you. You're really motivated. But then you do your searches. Indeed is going to give you 3,500 results for a product manager job in New York. You cannot filter. You have to go into the chat interface to actually ask for refiltering. For Indeed, that works well because they have very extensive taxonomies and they can really nail down the filtering. For the majority of job boards, they don't have taxonomies, so the filtering is going to be pretty much off. It's going to be just like keyword based. And then when you finally find a job that you want to apply to, you get clicked out to Indeed from ChatGPT. Like, I don't know. It's beyond me why anyone would build this in the first place. To be completely honest, there is a different company to Indeed that has actually allowed job seekers to also apply on ChatGPT. However, they don't use an end-to-end ATS integration. They use a combination of headless browser, AI, and computer vision to submit the application in the name of the job seeker, so like an AI applied tool. And a large percentage of their jobs on ChatGPT allow you to actually apply on ChatGPT physically for a job. That is looks pretty cool. Has a lot of issues on its own, but credit is due where it's due. From my job board clients, I see on average 1 to 2% traffic coming from ChatGPT and Claude and all the LLMs. So my advice to them has been, ROI and effort are completely not synchronized. Like, don't do it right now. And I don't think it's sticky. I don't see the stickiness of this.
I actually worry about another piece, which is the candidate putting an extraordinarily large amount of PII into the LLM in order to apply if they're applying on the LLM, right? So this is the same thing with the AI bots. I get a little bit uncomfortable, not a little bit, I get extraordinarily uncomfortable when you trace back the AI bots and which country they are based in and which data protection laws don't apply to them, that you've just now given up your CV, all your work history, and who knows what else you've provided in nice, tight fielded data for them. The same thing being the LLMs, right? You're now providing all of your personal information because a job application is extraordinarily invasive, right to the LLM's training model because you're using it as a consumer, the consumer interface, which has no data protection. So that's a different roundtable that we'll be covering later, I'm guessing. Julie's having a moment right now. She's like, I'm writing all this down. Uh, if we move forward here, James, I found that you have some catchphrases that you really enjoy. One of them that candidates trust employees more than the brand. I think what you mean by that is the storytelling. When you think about this from the AIO, SEO, answer AO, however many letters you want to do, EIEIO, storytelling, is that video? Is that written? Is there a preference? Is there a way that companies should be telling these stories, or is it more important to tell the stories than it is than the mechanisms in which they're doing it? If that makes
Yeah, I
sense.
think it does. And I think if we can, at least for step one, unpack the concept of story is not what Pixar thinks of a story is. Once there was a fish and then its mother died and
Yeah,
blah,
always
blah,
kill the
blah.
parents. Kill the
Yeah,
parents.
exactly.
First
Always.
thing.
Yeah. Those poor,
100%.
poor,
Mom
poor
has to
parents.
die.
Yeah. Bambi. Well, that was a great model. Let's go with that. But when we bring up storytelling and recruiting, we often think of once there was a candidate or once there was a person and they had a great idea and they did a thing, and we tell stories. The best story is simply proof of what you promise. How can you prove it? You can come up with a million different ways of how you prove it. If you're offering autonomy, there are a million ways to prove autonomy. If you're offering high salaries, there's a million ways to prove it. Everybody knows Goldman Sachs pays a lot of money. Do they say we pay a lot of money on the career site? Do they tell a lot of stories about how everybody's rich? No. But if you zoom in on those pictures, those are really nice watches they're wearing. They have lots of different ways of telling those stories. But the truth is, most companies have zero idea what the story is they want to be telling. And so what they do is they scrape a bunch of quotes that all sound really, really nice from their candidate, from their employees and from staff and whatever, and they stuff them into videos. They stuff it. The format doesn't matter so long as you can extract it. And right now, text is still the primary means of extraction information from anywhere and getting it into LLMs. The format doesn't really matter. But it's really about having a strategy around what is the story you want people to walk away with? What do you want people to believe about this company because you told them? For example, Buffer, which is a company that up until 2 years ago when I first discovered this, I really hadn't thought about Buffer in a long time, right? They scheduled social media posts, whatever, that's cool. They are all about transparency. What's the story they tell? Here are our salaries. I mean, literally on their career site is a page in which they list every single person who works there and their salaries. Do you need more evidence or proof? Do you need more once there was a candidate who? No, you don't need any of that. You believe that story, even though it's not in a storytelling model. So think of stories instead as proof of what it is you're offering, and you're going to go a long way. Embed that into models by which that LLMs can understand that and use that as evidence, because you'll notice when you do big research on LLMs, they like to cite their research. They like to say, this is where that story came from. This is where that quote came from. This is where I found that information. Yeah, we'll keep in the hallucination question aside, because I'm surprised I'm the first person to say that word here today. But if you keep that aside, they are trying to cite the information they're coming from. If you're putting it out in the world, if you're putting it in different places, if you're putting it on different websites, that does tend to influence these platforms.
So bridging this back to what Alexander was saying around the getting your jobs indexed by Google, making sure that they're discoverable. Is there really an opportunity here for the job description to have a whole new meaning where that is actually where some of this should go? I'm the first to say candidates don't read job descriptions until you get an interview. I say this constantly because thank you for writing this job description that no one read. They just applied. But when you call them and they're like, let's talk, they're like, oh, well, shoot, I should probably read that job description now. That's the
It's sweet of you
moment.
to also say that someone wrote that, when in fact we all know exactly where that came from. It was stitched together from 4 other job postings and run through an LLM. Go ahead, continue.
Well, once upon a time, it was written by a lawyer, and
So long ago. So long
a
ago.
lawyer and a finance person got together and wrote a job description. Probably how that worked.
World's worst bedtime
But
story.
well, no, it's the best. You're going to sleep. So, is that the bridge? Is that where the job content and the employer brand really need to start to come together? Or is there a different way we should be thinking about this? And I don't really know who this question is directed to.
Alex, I'll give you first shot at it because I got strong opinions, but then again, no one's shocked by that.
No, then you do it first, because mine is a bit weaker. So
Okay, all right. I think everything is up for grabs. What's in a career site? Up for grabs. What's on the job post? Up for grabs. I think the first thing we all have to embrace, and given that I know a bunch of people in this room, you're all going to agree with this, they're not job descriptions. They're commercials for your job. And much like a car commercial or a Pepsi commercial or whatever, it's not a list of ingredients. It's not a list of features. It's not a list of here's how much PSI it's required in the tires. It is, this is why you buy this thing. And once I get you emotionally hooked and interested in this thing, there's a site, there's a thing, there's some other place you can go to get the details. But if I'm trying to hire a project manager, I don't start with, this is why I want to hire it. Like every social media post, I say, we're hiring a project manager. We want this. We want this. It's not about you, friends. It's about them. Make it about them. Tell me why they should care about this stuff. Tell me why they should be interested. And if we unpack what a job description, job posting is, and think of it first as a commercial and stuff it full of the stories that we want them to listen to, the things we want them to believe, are they more inclined to read it? That's a big open question, and I don't know how to answer that. But it does, one, provide a lot more information, a lot more detail, and it helps the LLMs understand, oh, right now when every job post is exactly the same and they all have the same kind of bullets, they can't tell the difference between why they should surface this one versus that one. The more information you put in makes it easier for them to go, oh, this sounds like this person wants this job, not that. So in a future state, when actually these systems are spidering their jobs much, much more quickly, we're actually providing enough information for choice to happen. And as a guy who writes a site called Becoming Choosable and has a site called choosable.ai, it's all about creating and manufacturing choice.
So I don't disagree with that. I see it probably a bit different in the sense of that I'm coming from the like hardcore tech perspective, which is that I don't think that LLMs are really going to start reading. I mean, yes, of course, there is a huge training corpus that has all your historic job descriptions baked in, right? So if over the years you have used a term which is, you're allowed to bring your pets at work at Siemens or whatever company it is, then if someone searches for best company to bring your pet, most likely you will appear in these results. But I think that's what you need to consider, and it goes a bit outside of the job description, is that when people search on ChatGPT, I don't think that they're going to go and say, give me senior project manager jobs New York right now. They'll provide a lot more keywords. These keywords the LLM is going to take, is going to create all kinds of different variations of these keywords, the so-called fanning out of the query. Like what happens there, no one really knows. And you can never know because there is certain randomness in LLMs, and this randomness cannot be controlled, cannot be tracked. My results on my query will be completely different to James' query and to Leah's query. And the more they tune into the whole personalization layer, the more this tracking is going to become impossible, which is why most AIO geo trackers are bullshit. Don't spend your money on that. If you just want to waste money, give it to me or to any charity of your choice. That's always good. But at this point in time, I think at this stage, people are going to search for stuff like best companies for senior engineers who care about work-life balance, right? And you can test what kind of keywords such query is going to generate. You can see already what you rank for, what is associated with your brands. You just have to create a few of these fanouts and just make sure that they're mentioned in the job descriptions, because this context needs to be there. If you don't have it in text, then you don't probably won't appear that much in the future training data, right? Like immediately, it's not going to change anything.
Can
There
I
was a
can I
time.
bring us can I bring up a subject that really is near and dear? The concept of keywords, I think, is troubling to me because keywords are and this is where Alex and I get in a fight, and everybody's paying their money. This is the fight you were looking for. You're welcome.
Alex does not look like he wants to get in a fight at all.
That's all right. I'm going to
He's
lose.
very serene. I mean, I don't
He's
think you're going
he's
to get
gonna
what you
he's
want
gonna
here.
throw a bunch of technical terms at me, and I'm gonna just quit. I'm just gonna be like, whatever. The concept of keywords was started as a way of optimizing our pages and content to level up on Google, to be the top ranked on Google. Everybody knows the joke. What's the best place to hide a dead body? Second page of Google search results. No one goes to those pages. Because the goal is to get more. Do you want more? Do you want more applications? Do you want more people on your career site? Do you want more eyeballs on your jobs? Do you want more? I don't think we do. To me, the thing that makes recruiting interesting, different, and not the same as every other kind of marketing, every other kind of process is that we are here for better, not more, which means optimizing for keywords and focusing on keywords and even thinking about keywords is a way to optimize around getting more applications and getting more eyeballs, which we may or may not want. There are cases in which that's not true and which you want more. And yes, I get that. But for the most part, when you're trying to hire the best project manager, when you're just trying to hire your best sales manager, you want the best, which means you need to be, what is the best? It means it's about matching. It's about understanding, what do we offer? What do they want? Are these things in alignment? Can they do the thing that we want them to do? And that's where I get very nervous when we carry over thinking from previous technology generations like keywords into this and saying, we'll just apply it to this. That's where I think we get into trouble. Alex, please beat me up.
Oh, I live in Spain, it's 7 p.m., so I'm not in a mood for a fight.
5 hours after the siesta time.
I want to pick up a thing you just said, though, James, right? It's about match. I would argue that the majority of the recruitment market is disenfranchised in match because match has been absolute garbage for the last 20 years. And there's all the financial reasons in the world for job boards primarily to keep match bad, right? Right, when you make more money by charging for clicks that go nowhere or that the person paying for them never sees the end result, really disincentivizes you to fix match, which is what I think everyone's talking about. But let me throw something else into this conversation. Prior to COVID, I remember hearing the words persona in recruitment and recruitment marketing a lot. And I have not heard about a persona in quite a few years. I was you're talking, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, wow, I haven't heard about a persona in a while. But isn't that really where we need to go back to? Do we need to root back into having personas for our employee or our ideal employees? Be careful with all of our um,
Yeah.
legal and diversity challenges that come along with that. But do we need to start to really root into, like, for example, we're an organization that only hires remotely. What does that mean, right? What kind of people do we want to hire and who want to work for us? So it's a two-way street, right? It's not one or the other. And do we need to build around that? Sorry, that was not on our pre-discussed conversation, but as you've noticed, half of these questions aren't. So
yeah. Well, first off, the reason personas died is because they made no sense. Because in any world where you say, I have two people, they have similar kind of upbringings, they have similar kind of salaries, they live in similar kind of places, they live in the same countries, they were born in the same year, you'd say, okay, they're in a similar kind of cohort, except I'm talking about Ozzy Osbourne and King Charles. So any place in which those two human beings can be put together in the same, no, it's broken, it's all dead. However, What I find really fascinating is we can go super deep on, if you want to call them personas and just, say it's in a different kind of persona, I'm down for it. But right now, I'm very much kind of involved in generating synthetic profiles to say, how do we understand how people look for jobs? How do we understand how we can look different to them? How do we understand, how do we reach those specific audiences exactly? Because if to the ICP conversation happening in the chat, which thank goodness we had it, which I think, AI has done wonders in surfacing that term for a lot of people. It's not about how do I get 100 applications, it's how do I get the 2 perfect candidates to show up? Which means I have to know what perfect looks like. I have to know what great looks like. I have to be able to describe that. And I have to know what great people want from me, because it's not what everybody wants, it's what they want. And it really completely narrows the aperture on what we're putting out there and what we want to be saying and how we think about it, so that the job posting that looks and sounds the same, so that every job board can use it and every job board can show it, so that the maximum number of eyeballs can get it. That's not the goal anymore. It should be, I want 5 people to see this job. One of them applies and the other one says, I know who's perfect for you, and they share it to their friend who is that other perfect person. That's, to me, is the ideal, what a job should be, which means we need to speak more specifically to those audiences and not trying to whitewash things and slap a bunch of awards and say nice things and we're a great company and all the other wonderful things we do to kind of just rose-colored glasses our jobs.
Hey, Leah, let me back up on 2 questions from what James was talking about keywords. When Google rolled out AdWords and started to promote keyword targeting, there was obviously a lot of adoption and use, etc. The most important tool in the toolbox for marketers to use for AdWords in terms of shaping who you're targeting actually turned out to be negative keywords, right? And so guiding about who to exclude, which I think gets at your point about not just more, but more of the right, if you will, more of kind of the best match to build on that point. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily about not not leveraging or looking at what has happened in the past. Maybe it's more about what is the echo of that sentiment around how do you get both visibility to more, but also create a better filter or some type of filtering mechanic to make it so that you are trying to make the people that aren't a good match maybe make the decision early on to say, maybe this isn't actually the right place. Like, I really enjoy reading when people put into their job postings things like, these are all of the things that are really difficult about this job. Nobody ever says it exactly that way, but if you do the proper job of expectation setting, maybe you don't get everybody under the sun that says this is just going to be, roses and rainbows and so forth. Thoughts?
Cannot agree more. That being more clear about setting expectations, and the term we should be embracing more is trade-offs. For every good thing your company offers, it empowers and engenders a less positive thing, right? If you say we get a lot of stuff done and we perform at a high level, that sounds great, except you go, well, what's the workload like? What's the working hours like? If you say we have great work-life balance, that sounds great, except you go, yeah, our salaries are not gonna, they're going to be commensurate with that level of work, right? They're balancing. You say you're all about autonomy, that sounds great, except it's total chaos. You say you're all about collaboration, that sounds great, except it's really slow to get things done. Explaining the trade-offs and making that real is an opportunity for you to, one, explain and be more clear and credible about the things you are offering that are positive, but at the same time, you're also dispositioning, not the way recruiters think of it, the negative claims. So when someone goes on Glassdoor and says, this place is horrible, it's chaotic, you can say, yeah, we offer maximum autonomy. Of course it's going to be chaotic. And suddenly that bad review is just proof of the wonderful thing you're offering. So I think we have to understand jobs not as these are all the wonderful things about it, but this is what's going to suck, or it's a job. We pay you because it's not puppy dogs and daisies and tickle fights all day long.
Right, to your point about the commercial, it's the pharmaceutical commercial that says, this is going to make you feel great, except you might die tomorrow, you'll lose all your hair, and your right arm will fall off. But other than that, it's exactly
And
what
if you're allergic to it, don't take it, which is my favorite. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Should definitely not take it if you're allergic to it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All
This
right,
is helpful.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should not take this job if you're allergic to it too. Also, probably a good thing.
There's a whole conversation of if you had to change your jobs into the medical disclaimers, that would be a whole
I feel like
thing. Yeah.
pharmaceutical companies should do that in general. That feels like they are
Oh,
the pointy end of the spear on that one.
oh no, no, no. They're the least creative. They're no, the least willing to try something new there.
It's always interesting. Alexander, do you want to jump in on this? You look like you had a lean in.
There's so many so many thoughts, Where do I start? I mean, I want to say something about keywords because in my opinion, keywords are not going away. And for me, as someone who works on the job board side of the business, we're always optimizing, up of the funnel. That's like top of the funnel, up of the funnel, whatever you want to say. And it just became recently a problem that you have too many applications. Okay, remember, like 3 years ago, that wasn't a problem, and it's still not a problem for everyone. So I sat at a job board conference last week, and the CEO of one of the largest job boards in the UK, CV Library, said we don't have problems with too many applications. Our customers actually want more applications. They don't have enough. So I would not ignore the concept of a keywords. Again, with the complexity that right now targeting keywords on LLMs is a bit harder than people like to sell it, and it's not consistent, right? If you do a search today, it's going to change tomorrow, and if you do it on one computer, it's going to be different than another one, which again is the case on Google, but there are ways to control this. But I want to say something about this whole discussion we had about being open and like sharing what your jobs are really about and what it's not about. This is all great on paper. I completely agree with it. But if this data does not make it into the training data of an LLM, so your jobs are not properly indexable and scrapable, and if you don't have enough sections in your website that cover these topics, that get indexed and that get quoted and that get linked to, then this whole thing is not going to have any impact. Okay, I think it's very important to know this. You can disclose whatever you want in your job descriptions. If they're not scrapable, if they're not crawlable, if they cannot be found, it's not going to bring anything. It's not going to change anything, or it might take like 2 years for you to start seeing some impact. And until then, all the Reddit threads and TechCrunch and whatever platform trends in 3 months in LLM is going to just rule your brand perception. And it's not going to be you.
I think it's interesting though, because the websites, the career sites are the one most static platform that we leverage. It's the one, first off, it's the one platform we have the most control over, right? Anybody wants to tell LinkedIn to change their color from blue to green, good luck to you. Right? It's the one place where you have maximum control, marketing barred from that. Jobs are like mayflies. They live for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. And so there's a reason why the LLMs are not focusing on them, is because that content was useful once. They're like the newspapers, thinking about they're good today, but they're lining bird cages tomorrow. So to me, the place where you can plant your flag, what your brand is, what you're promising, what you're offering, the pros and cons, the trade-offs, all that stuff that people should want to hear, to understand. And that LLMs will say, okay, that's interesting, tell me more. And we can talk about formats like FAQs and Q&As and tables of comparative data, which we all know LLMs eat up like candy bars. But to me, the platform of the career site is where you can plant that flag, and that over time you add to and add to and add to, which simply reinforces to the LLM, okay, they must mean this. It's not just something they said once someplace else. And that is where you start to adjust your strategy to say, how do we get more people to point to this place and platform so that they understand and they say, this is canonical data around who we are and what we do.
I'm going to throw a couple things in here. So first, here we go, right? Career sites that are hosted on a third-party site, helps you, hurts you?
Yes. Okay. I mean, yeah. The third-party site is so complicated and it is so messy, because we all know that when, platforms that podcast advertise a lot and who shall not be named for reasons barring other, there's legal reasons. When they post your jobs and people apply to them, but that job closed 6 months ago, who's to blame? Not them, you. Right? So platforms in which you don't have direct control over your jobs is complicated. Does it expand your awareness? Is it top of the funnel growth? Absolutely. But that's useful. But it's complicated. Deeper content like a built-in, like just third-party platforms, yeah, they're useful. And I think right now, as far as I can tell, they have good SEO Google juice, and I wonder how much of that's going to trickle into how LLMs rank these things, because let's be fair, their own algorithms are just going to be shadows and clones of what Google's doing. There's probably value in that. I think the truth is there's no optimal way to do anything other than to do something. So rather than say, I would do this and don't do that, I would just say, do stuff. Do it now. Try, try, try. And you'd be, even if it's spaghetti against the wall, doing stuff is better than doing nothing.
With Google for Jobs, right? And Alex, you were talking about this, optimize, make them findable, make them discoverable. If you can allow for an application without a login, these are all the rules of Google for Jobs. But at the end of the day, a lot of what wins is volume, right? So the job boards that produce a giant list of jobs for Google is still winning, right? And if Google takes that job content, moves it into Gemini, I'm going somewhere here, right? Moves it into Gemini. How does this interplay with employer brand? And I just want to put one more fact and evidence. I remember, because I'm old, when Google came out, like back in the day, right? We were in like Alta Vista land, and the rate in which sites were crawled were not every 20 minutes, but every like 20 days. We were lucky, right? It was a big deal when they started doing the new sites every day, not every minute, not every hour, every day, right? That was a big deal as a shift. So how far are we away? I know this is crystal ball, from the LLMs actually getting to the point where they are indexing at a much more frequent rate, at least once a day or every other day or so forth. So then this job content problem starts to diminish as it becomes more readily available and accessible. That's a big statement and question all put together.
I think it's a different problem. So Google has the biggest index of jobs, which is Google Jobs. And it probably covers, at this point in time, maybe 80% of US job inventory. There's absolutely no chance that any of the other LLM vendors are going to start building their own index. I don't think that they're going to invest into this. It's real pain. It's annoying. I don't see what kind of advantage this brings them. So Google has a huge advantage because they already have it, and they're going to inject this into Gemini. ChatGPT will most likely do a cooperation with Indeed and will just pull their inventory. So that's about like the pure part about job sourcing. None of these guys are going to do job scraping and whatever. I'm pretty confident on that, willing to bet a lot of money on this, at least for the next couple of years. Because if they figure out AGI, then we'll do everything. But if we look at why job boards currently outrank career sites on Google for Jobs, it's not very complicated. It's very few simple things. It's technical SEO. It's like technicalities. It's the fact that they have built extensive category page structure, which you as an employer can also build. It's not only reserved to job boards. Anyone can do it, and you actually know your jobs a lot better, and you have the option to create them. So that's like the second thing. And the third one is the fact that a lot of job boards do invest in backlinks, and which currently drives most of the EAT authority and whatever Google uses as a metric for it's a good site and a bad site. Career sites did get a nice bump a few years ago, but it was not enough. So you just have to do a little bit of what Google Jobs, of what job boards do, and it's not going to be that hard to outrank them. However, in my experience, these technicalities become a problem because the owner of the career page, there are different stakeholders. You have your IT, you have your marketing people, you have your internal law, like security team, and like everyone is just not working together, and this becomes this graveyard of
Wait,
yeah.
you forgot your ATS has a voice in this because they
Yeah, they don't.
often are hosting
I
a
know, right?
page. Maybe your agency, maybe your CRM vendor. Like you've got the whole vendor community that all has an opinion on this as well.
Yeah, but they don't care. Like, when has Brastring or Taleo ever cared about Google Jobs performance?
They don't.
Lever cares a little bit more, but up to a point, very basic.
They do not care. That is, they are an applicant tracking, not an applicant attracting.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right that insane number of stakeholders is the exact reason why career sites suck. And I'm not going to I'm not going to be nice about it. They suck because Anyone who's gone through a career site process knows it's like gestating an elephant. That it's a nightmare in which everybody else has more opinions because they're paid more than you are, and thus you are an idiot, and thus anything you know about your candidates and how they look for jobs and what they're looking for and what the marketplace looks like is worthless compared to the senior vice president or whatever who likes the color blue. That's just how it's going to be. And so consequently, when all those people get in a room, you get compromise on a compromise of a Xerox of an echo of a compromise, and consequently every career site looks the same. I think this is one of those eggs chicken situations, right? Is it that no one spiders these sites and crawls these sites or cares and gives the juice to these sites because they're bad? Yeah, but now that we realize it's the one thing we can hold that really we can squeeze value out of and tell a strong story and proof and add lots of value and insert a bunch of compelling content around, that makes it more powerful, which makes the person who's truly driving the career site a lot more valuable in those meetings, thus reinforcing the idea that you can tell more clear stories. And we've got lots of data, we've got lots of resources, many of which are AI to help us tell more clear, compelling stories. The big sea change is we're moving from a world in which we just needed a bunch of applicants. And when we got 1,000 applicants or 100 applicants, the hiring manager could find their particular needle in that haystack, to a world in which hiring managers don't want to do that, to which we as recruiters and recruiting leaders need to be consultative and supportive and helping them find the best people, helping them define what great looks like before you write the job posting, tell the stories that make that idea of great clear as day, put that in ahead of time so that the career site thus reinforces and becomes more valuable.
We're coming up on time. Alexander, last statement. What is the one thing employers need to do today to be more effective in their AIO, SEO, EIO strategy?
The one, I have 5. How do I choose?
Okay, 5, go. Go.
Okay, so write the 10 pages of the common questions that people ask around your job category. So go to a Google search page, see what kind of questions people ask when they search for engineer, your brand, job, whatever, right? There'll be probably 10 to 15 questions. You can grab them in a programmatic way, write these pages. Ask your team and recruiters to publish on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is still pretty much a very solid source in AIO and GEO, so that will help you appear. It's a short-term effect, but nevertheless, it works. Go on community platforms, Reddit, unfortunately, huge one. People hate it, people love it. You have to go there. Like built-in is also what James mentioned, definitely. Glassdoor, you have to be there because they get quoted a lot. Build some first-party data assets, like salary reports around your data, internal mobility reports, engineering blog posting, something with real numbers that LLMs can quote. And the last one is, this is the last one. Make sure that your kind of the entity layer on your site, like your brand and your top job titles that you're hiring for, actually appear, so that LLMs can pick them as training data, right? So this is kind of the foundational thing on LLMs. So the keywords that you want to hire for, they need to appear close together to the keyword that you actually want to get traffic for. There is
James,
5.
that was beautiful.
I
James,
agree with
final
everything
statement.
he said. I agree with everything he said from a technical standpoint. That's 1,000% correct. And you should listen to him when it comes to technical matters far more than me. However, once you've nailed your technical, if everybody's telling the same story in the technical way, what does it matter? So I'm going to be the left brain, he could be the right brain, and we'll come together, peace and love and harmony, and there'll be a handshake someplace across the Atlantic. It's a delightful moment. It's a delightful moment for world peace here in the Zoom room. But I posted a big link of about a massive article I wrote about a whole lot of things you could be doing. But again, it starts with, yes, the technical side is also true.
Well, I mean, just to bridge between the two brains, I think what Alexander was calling out as item number 1 is understand the questions your job seekers are asking. And I think what you're saying is answer them in a way that demonstrates that you're differentiated from everybody else.
I can't argue with that. That makes me sound smart. I like it.
Well done, James. Well
Why we
done.
bring you guys together. Peace in the world.
Truly.
Oh, with that,
Peace in
thank
our
you guys,
time at
everyone.
last.
We are at time. I really appreciate everybody who stuck into the end. Thank you so much. I hope this was useful. We will be back next month. Julie and I are finalizing our speaker roundup, and we will get a note out soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Alex. Thanks, James.
Thank you for joining.